I'm Monte Pittman, and I play guitar, and I sing, and I make albums, and I teach guitar lessons, and I hope you're having a great day.
Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. And so let's start with some of the basic stuff. How did you very first get started in music? Like, did you come from a musical family? Like, who was your early influences, family or outside of family?
Well, that started with my older sister. I used to go into her room and listen to her Kiss records. And that's where it all started. I was one of those kids who would stand on the bed and Frehley. And I was 3. That's probably my earliest photos, when I was 3. And then as music evolved, I look at myself as very fortunate to have grown up in that time. And I started getting into Motley Crue and Twisted Sister. The way you would get music is you would get a tape for Christmas or for your birthday. So you would get music only a couple of times a year. Well, then there was Columbia House, so you could order like 12 tapes, and then that's a way that you would kind of find out about new bands. But then I turned 13, I got my first guitar, my first real guitar. And I had played in the school band. I played drums because that was the closest I could get to playing in a band. And when I got my first guitar was when, Metallica, Slayer, Anthrax, Testament, those bands were all coming out. So that was a really exciting time for music.
So how old were you playing drums, and how old were you when you started with guitar?
Well, I got my first, guitar that wasn't a toy. Because I had, toy guitars, and I would break the strings. I'd put rubber bands on there. And I would take, from, when my mom would go to the grocery store, and those little plastic clips that you put on the bags that you put vegetables in, and I would cut those with scissors to make picks. So those would be my picks, and then my toy guitar with rubber bands would be my strings, and I would break them, or you could get fishing line. I would get that from my neighbors and put fishing line on the guitars. But you would always break those. But that at least kind of gave me an idea, or I kind of when I got it first, I understood what to do, and I wanted to do it so badly that I knew what to do. So I don't remember how old I was when I was playing drums. I was probably 5th grade where that started. But my first guitar, I was 13, and so all these bands are coming out, and it was something challenging to play, fun to play. So that was an exciting time. And then you had Steve Vai, Joe Satriani. Then you have these Guitar Hero guys. And then that was exciting too. That was another wave of influence. And then when the 90s hit, then you've got grunge bands, you've got the death metal bands, all that coming, and then kind of a new wave of heavy bands. Pantera I grew up outside of Dallas, so Pantera I would always hear about Pantera even before Cowboys from Hell.
Now that brings up something I was going to ask about. Wasn't there a time when you played Pantera with Madonna?
Yeah.
How did that come about?
That came from because I teach guitar lessons, and I teach online over Skype and FaceTime. So anybody who wants guitar lessons, you can email me at lessons@montepittman.com or go to my website. And so I'm giving Madonna some lessons, and we're getting ready for this tour that we're doing. And I was giving her some things to play to work on right hand technique, and that led to me showing her the riff to a new level from Pantera. And I showed her in a way where it's called drop D tuning, in case you play guitar, because I realize a lot of people don't, they don't know what I'm talking about. So you just tune one string down to a D, that's the note, and then with one finger you put just one finger down on the frets, and that way you can make a chord. So I showed her that song this way, because it's not actually the song, not actually the way the song is played, although it's the same notes. So I showed her that riff, and she just kept playing it. So when we the song in the set, when we build a set list, it's like the first song we start working on is the first song on the set list, and it kind of goes in order. We dip around, maybe every once in a while, So we had got to that point in the set list, and she was playing guitar, and then afterwards she just started going, dun, 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 you know, started playing the riff, and then the rest of the band just started playing with her. And the next day that happened, and the next day that happened. We never have anyone there at rehearsals. It's a closed rehearsal, of course. But then when we got to that part of the set, the tour manager would show up with some papers, and the runner would come in and just put some waters in the refrigerator. And then after a few days, it's like at that point, all these people just showed up because they were like, hey, did you hear what she was doing? And so they would come and just see that, like, wow, I can't believe I was watching Madonna play a Pantera. And I mean, that's not something I even really about. A lot of the things with her is you look back on, or somebody brings it up, and then you just kind of go, whoa, what happened?
I saw the video of that. It was amazing.
Yeah. And I remember, I mean, I definitely have a respect for Madonna because she and I both being from Michigan, and specifically the Bay City area.
Yeah, there you go, of course, yeah. She's your hometown hero.
Exactly.
Like Pantera were for me.
But seeing her live compared to the thousands of bands that I've seen, it was more like watching a Cirque du Soleil performance with very choreographed motions that's literally all over. That's awesome and amazing. But from a playing standpoint, compared to playing with like Prong, how is that different for you?
Well, I mean, they're both a form of dance music. You know, I've always looked at Prong as like heavy dance music, and they both kind of came from the same place, you know, from New York. You know, I'm pretty sure that her first band that she had, I think they played at CBGB's, and then, you know, Prong started from CBGB's.
Oh yeah.
And Tommy was the sound man, and either, you know, Ted was, I got to find the story out exactly because I never think to ask, but like Mike ran the door and Ted booked the bands, or is the other way around, and that's how they started. So they kind of started around the same kind of place. And what I would do is I would go as soon as a Madonna tour was done, I would go to Prong, and that's how the 2000s were for me. Until it got
I know when I first met you and I was interviewing Tommy, he's like telling me, he's like, oh yeah, he plays for Madonna. I didn't believe him at first. I thought he was joking.
Yeah.
He's like, no, really, he does. I'm like, really?
When
you guys were like traveling in a van at the time, you know, so
yeah.
I can imagine the difference of van versus. I'd have to imagine Madonna's not in a van.
No, we're in a van too. We're in the same van.
Same one?
Yeah. Yeah, she drives though.
Nice.
Tommy wouldn't drive. You know, there's only so many notes in music, and I think a lot of guitar players like a lot of different kind of music. So there's versatility. One of my favorite things about playing guitar for Madonna is you have all these different styles of music you play. You know, there's always something with the acoustic guitar. There's something that's like a rock oriented thing. Like the last tour we did like a heavy version of Burning Up. And the amp it's a Kemper amp where you record the amp sound, but the sound that was recorded was one of Kerry King's signature Marshall amps. Kerry King's the guitar player.
Slayer. Yeah.
So I was actually showing Brent Woods, Sebastian Bach's tech, his guitar player, earlier at Soundcheck. I said, hey, check this out, listen, because I just happened to have that sound up. I was just kind of tweaking some sounds. I said, whose amp do you think this is? He goes, I don't know. I'm like, that's Madonna's amp. He's like, what? It's so heavy.
That's on your Kemper?
Yeah, it's on the Kemper. So, there's only so many notes, and it's all just the attitude and the style you play it in, or the effect that you use.
Well, and another thing that surprised me about Madonna specifically, I remember when I was touring on Ozfest in 2002, every morning, that was part of their soundcheck lineup, was actually playing one of her songs.
Well, which one?
Oh my God, now you gotta quiz me. I forget which one.
It's okay.
It's been a while. I don't want to say the wrong one because I'm thinking of one and I know that's not the right one. But let's just say they used that and Metallica, and there was like a couple other ones that they play every single morning. And you just hear it, and just the range of the highs versus the lows is something that most people wouldn't even think of. They just don't even pay attention to that range.
I look at it like classical music.
Exactly.
Because there's so many components that make the whole thing what it is. And just like, you know, guitar is one little piece, and sometimes it's there, you don't notice it. Sometimes there's no guitar. Just like if you have a classical piece, there's just the violin playing right here, and everybody else cuts out.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely have an appreciation to the amount of content there is. Not even, like I said, just musically, but even in the stage show. And I would have to imagine being on stage with some of the choreographed moves that sometimes I'd be very aware of where the performers are.
Oh,
have you ever had any
mishaps? You always do. There's we rehearse so much though. I mean, usually it's 3 or 4 months of rehearsal before we play. So you know it so well. If something goes wrong, God forbid, if you know something, a piece doesn't work, you know how to get around it.
Yeah, that's a good thing. So anyways, we're gonna wrap up this segment and cut to another one.
Okay.
So thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you in the next segment.